Love. It can be one of the most powerful, amazing forces in our lives, right? But what happens when it's not? What happens when it goes wrong, really wrong? In this explainer, we're going to dive into 5 completely different stories that show the many faces of toxic love. And, more importantly, what we can all learn from them.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get a handle on what a toxic relationship actually is. Then we'll get into these stories. Stories about deception and that slow, quiet erosion of who you are. We'll find that one moment of clarity that changes everything, and then we'll look at how you can actually reclaim your own story and move forward.
As we go through these 5 stories, I want you to keep this one big question in the back of your mind. What are the red flags? What are those little or maybe not so little signs that something has gone from loving to toxic? Each story gives us a totally different piece of that puzzle.
All right, first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. Before we can really dig into these stories, we need a clear idea of the one thing they all have in common.
You know, a toxic relationship isn't just a bad patch or a fight you had last week. No, it's a pattern. It's this steady diet of behaviors, like deceit, control, and disrespect, that just constantly chip away at your spirit, at your sense of self, and that right there is the common thread tying all of these stories together.
Okay, so let's dive into our first theme. This is where we see how toxicity can start from the very beginning, with a relationship that's built on a foundation of total deceit.
Our first story introduces us to Jake. And listen, from the outside looking in, and even from his own point of view, this guy had it all. An 8-year relationship, a family, what he was sure was happiness. His entire world was built on that belief. And then, bam, with one single devastating confession from his partner Jenna, the foundation of Jake's entire world just crumples. The scariest part here isn't just the lie itself, it's how deep it goes. This wasn't just a mistake. It was the complete rewriting of 8 years of history. It meant his family was built on manipulation from day one.
But you know, deceit isn't always a big bang. Sometimes it's more like a slow leak, a series of red flags that we choose to ignore. And that brings us to our next story, about Johnny. He's literally about to propose. But unlike Jake, who is totally blindsided, Johnny has been seeing the warning signs for a while.
I mean, the red flags were all there. His girlfriend Rachel getting distant, bailing on plans, not picking up his calls. Each one was like a little alarm bell trying to tell him something was seriously wrong. But denial is a really powerful thing, and it took seeing her with someone else, that hard proof, for the truth to finally crash through.
But his reaction is what's really amazing here. It wasn't about a huge fight or getting revenge. It was this quiet, symbolic act of saving himself. By tossing that ring, he was really tossing out the lie he'd been telling himself. He was choosing to just walk away and start fresh, on his own terms.
You know, toxicity isn't always about a single, dramatic lie. Sometimes it's so much quieter. It's this slow, steady chipping away at a person's self-worth, at their freedom. Let's take a look at how that can play out.
So let's talk about Adam. Here's a guy who's doing well, getting promotions, hitting his goals, but every single time he has a win, his partner Erica meets it with this wave of negativity. He finally gets to a point where he just has to ask her, face to face, what is going on?
And this is what she says to him. It just reveals the brutal reality of what he was dealing with. This isn't constructive criticism. It's a direct shot at his talent, at his value. It's designed to make him feel small, and it's coming from the one person who should be lifting him up.
Now, let's look at another form of this erosion: control. In this next story, the toxicity isn't about belittling accomplishments. It's about stripping away basic, everyday freedom in the most ordinary ways.
I mean, this is a truly shocking thing to say to your partner. We're not talking about a major life decision. We're talking about watching TV. It just perfectly shows how toxic control can creep into every single corner of your life, turning a partner into someone who has to ask for permission to do the simplest things.
This slide just lays out the contrast so powerfully. On one side, you've got Erica's method. I'll tear you down to make myself feel bigger. And then you have Clara from our 5th story, who has this amazing realization that true love and strength come from the exact opposite, from building each other up. It's such a stark reminder that in any relationship, you have a choice: support or sabotage.
So in every single one of these stories, there's a breaking point. There's that moment where the denial just shatters, and the truth becomes so clear you can't ignore it anymore. This is that critical turning point.
For Johnny, it was the cold, hard, visual proof. For Adam, it was hearing Erica actually say it out loud, that she liked putting him down. These are those final straw moments that just force you to see things as they really are.
You can actually see this path that's pretty common across all these stories. It starts with ignoring the signs, that period of denial. Then comes the final straw, the event that makes the truth impossible to avoid. And from there, you get to the most important step of all, the decision to finally do something about it.
And this brings us to what is honestly the most empowering part of all of these stories. What happens after that decision to act? This is all about taking back the pen and writing your own next chapter. Look, the decision to leave is almost always the hardest part. But for Jake, for Johnny, for Adam, and for the others, it was also the most necessary part. By walking away from the toxicity, they were walking toward their own healing. The end of that relationship was actually the beginning of getting their own lives back.
So what are the big lessons here? First, trust your gut. Those red flags are real, even if someone is telling you they're not. Second, your happiness and your accomplishments are valid and they should be celebrated, not treated like a threat. Third, real love is about building each other up, not tearing each other down. And finally, no matter how long you've been in it, it is never ever too late to reclaim your story and your self-worth.
And we'll leave you with this powerful thought from one of the stories. It's a reminder that in love, we shouldn't lose who we are. We should actually find more of who we are. A healthy relationship is a place where you grow, not a cage. And that's a truth worth holding on to.